Welcome to Podcasting Social Work. My name is Dr. Hassan. I'm going to host this episode, and today we have amazing guest Dr. Agnes Thomas. Today we are going to discuss about foundations of community development. Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for your time, and it's really my pleasure to meet you here at your office.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited as well. Community development, my passion and my heart. So
And
thank you for
thank
having
you
me.
so much for your contribution for our resource book called Community Development Practice from Canadian to Global Perspective. And I would like to congratulate you for your contribution, which is amazing. And we are going to have conversation on this today.
Thank you, and let us go.
Please tell us about yourself, your passion, and your agency.
So my agency, we provide support to newcomers, and we have staff who are working in 8 locations in Toronto, and we provide services in 30 plus languages because our community participants and our newcomers comes from all over the world. And so we have been in existence since 1954. The main focus is on settlement, but we do have language support, employment support, and refugee sponsorship training.
Now, I would like to ask you, how do you like to define community development?
That's a very complex question to answer because community development is not one cookie cutter approach, right? But like I like to actually look at those two components of those two words, community and development. So community is made up of people coming together in conversations, looking at what do we need to move forward and what is development for our communities and for ourselves, right? And so putting those two words together, people and the community, so the individual and the collective, and conversing or dialoguing together. I'm not using the academic language here, but like people with their passion, with their aspirations, with their desire for change and for a place where they belong and where they are thriving. And that is where community development works. So I believe community development in essence is individuals coming together for a common purpose that facilitate change, positive change and transformation within their communities that trickle down to the individual lives. So it changes the individual and the community as a whole, where transformation and positive change is possible.
Thank you. Now I would like to know about strength-based community development practice. I understand from your contribution for our book, Community Development Practice, that you are a big fan of strength-based approach. So can you please explain a little bit about your thought for strength-based community development practice?
So what makes me excited about community development as a whole is that every one of us has something to contribute. So my understanding of a strength-based community development stem from the fact that the individual has something to bring to the table. Not just their voice, not just their ideas, they have gifts and talents. And so in a strength-based approach, we are working with not, so let me talk about what is a deficient model or a charity model. Because when I was doing my disability studies, one of the thing that was so clear to me was the charity model of service. And so often we look at the individual as lacking something. So there is deficiency that needs to be fixed. Even the very word we use, empowerment, it is the fact that I should equip you with power. No, in the strength-based approach, you have the power. Maybe there is a facilitation of how that could be applied for your own growth and well-being. Again, that is participatory, where you are the center of the decision making of things that happens to you. So in a strength-based, it is collective. It is not that one person is the recipient of your kindness or charity, but you are an active member in your decision making, in your planning of what is best for you. And the same applies in community. So the individual and the community. So you would hear me all throughout this conversation talking about the individual and the collective, because often we think individual and isolate that as an individual problem. Sometimes that is not the case. It may be connected to a bigger issue, or it could be a system issue. So we needed to be aware as community developers, as practitioners, how to work with community together. So in a strength-based approach, there is always opportunities for celebration of those capacities people bring to the table, not that you are a problem that I needed to fix.
Excellent.
That's a long-winded answer.
Excellent point. As a community development practitioner, I understand and follow your work, and you are very passionate about working with communities and addressing various issues like growing inequalities, housing crisis in Toronto, food insecurity among various community groups, including newcomers, seniors, and also issues like racism. How do you think that this strength-based approach can be utilized for addressing some of the issues?
That's $1 million question, because the issues that we are facing are huge, massive problems like housing or unemployment, because the root causes of poverty or inequalities, there is much more into it, right? And so for me, in a strength-based approach, again, you are not going into a community and say that you people are the problem, you're not managing your funds proper, you didn't do this, but and also just by opening up centers for providing immediate short term, which is needed. When you need food, you need food. When you need shelter, you need shelter. But looking at more of a long term approach and a long term vision with people, I think community solutions comes from the community, then there is ownership. So often we are satisfied with the short-term solutions because here I'm hungry, you gave me food and I go away. But how do I have that conversation with you where we can talk about what would be the sustainable way that you are not going to be coming back to me for asking for food, but contribute because you are given the opportunity to make what you need, and you have additional that you can give away. So when we look at that, a problem become a solution, right? So in a strength-based, in my personal view, in a strength-based approach, we are looking at all of those issues that we are facing from asking that question, what would change? What would make a paradigm shift in our thinking? Our problems become our opportunities. And how do we do that respectfully with people? I think for anything there is a solution. Am I willing to give something of additional I have, right? And so that is like a deeply value-based challenge that we have, because we become so-called, in quote unquote, hoarders of things and positions and power and privilege. It is really about how am I able to slowly undo some of those pieces so that I can actually be a community person living in communion with the other, my neighbor. I'm not afraid, because people are afraid of difference and different perspectives, different understanding. I think when we become okay with ourselves to be allowing that difference to be a place for celebration, these issues will slowly start. And it is like a roundabout way of, or a philosophical or ideological answer, but there is true solutions can be found when we started acknowledging what is true and good in communities. When we stop looking at people and things as problems but as solutions and gifts and strength that can be manifested in many ways. And that is, I mean, we talk about racism and oppression. Why? Because somehow I feel I needed to exercise my power over you. I am better than you. And where is that coming from, right? And so I think there is a lot more work. It is not simple one day. It may be a long term piece that I'm using the word we, needed to do together. But for that, we need to be intentional. We need to be committed to uncover our own disparities and the ways that we hold communities or people in our mind. So there are conscious and unconscious bias that needs to be addressed. So it is multi-layered, it is multifaceted. It's not one problem, but it is closely connected, or it is interconnected. So the real question for us is, how committed and how intentional am I to be in community to build a solution that is long-term and sustainable?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Wonderful way you put together on a huge question how strength-based approach can be practiced. Thank you so much. So now I would like to ask you about your advice for our community development practitioners, especially for our students and learners across the globe. What steps they should follow to implement and plan and implement strength-based community development approach so that they can address the dignity of community people, value community opinions, and bring sustainable development in community lives.
Thank you. As I described in my chapter, one of the first things that I learned in beginning as a young woman doing community development was the importance of listening. Because I remember going to the community that I have a problem to solve and I knew what to do. And then after I stepped into the community and I started planning and thinking, I realized the biggest piece that was missing was that people were not a part of my plan. In order for me to be understanding, I needed to listen to them, and that there was a relationship piece that needs to be built. Because often we are in a hurry because somebody told you, okay, you need to go and work in this community, or there are problems in this community, go fix it, or you are the community worker there. And that's not how it works. So you go in, yes, you may have your assumptions. I think we needed to ask ourselves, what am I supposed to be here? Why am I here? And how am I going to get there? So those questions are very important. And it's not that after the first bit that you stop asking those questions, you needed to continue asking, am I being at the service of the community? Am I listening? And am I responding to what I'm hearing? Right? And so that is one. And a willingness to learn. Because yes, you can have your degrees and you can have your, all that credentials to go into a community, but that won't cut. Each community is different, like the way each of us are different, right? And so by choosing to do community development work, you are also choosing to be a lifelong learner. And
Excellent point.
work with humility, because you do not know what waits there, you do not know the other person's story. So it is a lot of discovery as you go. And another big important piece, so all the points that I mentioned in the chapter actually comes from my own experience in being in community, in different communities. Sometimes we go and we wanted to promise, here I'm going to fix this problem because we are passionate people. People who are doing community development, they're really passionate about something. They wanted to make things right. Keep that passion and make that as a practice, as a discipline. Because sometimes communities have been promised all the time so many things, and it is not being materialized. So communities have been frustrated. I'm not saying it is the case for every community, but you as an individual entering into a community, be consistent. When you say that you will show up at a place in a certain time for a meeting or to sit down with the elders in the community, show up on time. Maybe be early. And if you promise something, do it so. If you cannot, then do not promise. And that is so key in earning respect because it goes both ways. And the third piece is that I have seen this, and it's really sad that people become recipients of your, again, my goodness, I'm this good woman wanting to do good. Always remember, just like the way you like to be respected, the other person also like to be respected. So the dignity of the individual, regardless of, you may be meeting with a person who is not housed, you may be meeting with a person who is having a mental health challenge, regardless of how they are coming to you and whatever their need may be, deal with the person with respect. Because a dignified way of being with a person is meeting them where they are at, not sizing them up. And that will take you far in your relationship building and in your work. And another piece connected to that is addressing power relations. Because you cannot say, oh, I'm doing all this for you. But if you are a paid worker there, you are going, yes, your heart is very much there, but you are paid. And there may be volunteers or community members who are joining you in the project who are not paid. So address those things. Don't wait for somebody to discover. We cannot pretend. Your title, maybe that matters, and that may be a hindrance for somebody to enter. So talk with that person or talk with the group. That will go a long way in how they want to work with you. So be collaborative, right? And then, as I mentioned earlier, the individual and the system issue. Not everything is somebody is having a nervous breakdown and you wonder, like, what is happening with this person? Or this person is using whatever substance. Before we judge into those type of conclusions, find out what is happening in their environment. What is the ecosystem in which the person is in, and what kind of support they have. So asking those questions and willingness to understand the ecosystem will tell you much more about why somebody may be saying that, oh, they needed to access the food bank. How did they get there? So before we ask the question of why, ask how. That changes how somebody will explain something. Or a single woman living in poverty, how did she become a single woman? What are the other factors? There is gender, race, class, disabilities. There may be so many factors that we
Absolutely.
are unaware of. So as a community development worker going into a community, let us look into the whole system. The ecosystem is so much important as much as the individual. And do not individualize problems. Yes, you are trying to help or support somebody in their individual problem, but always keeping in mind, is there something beyond that, right? And look at what can you do together with the community to address that system issue, so that, as I was telling, using the example of the person who comes to you seeking food, so the next time around, the person is in a place that they are able to contribute and challenge those assumptions and change the way communities are living and lived, so that true positive transformation is possible.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Agnes Thomas, for your excellent overview on the foundations for community development practice. And you mentioned me that you have learned all these lessons from the field. And
One more, I forgot. Do not approach a community or communities as same. Communities are not same.
Excellent point.
You need to make your own definition for what community is with people. And therefore, the approach to problems may not be the same. So always be creative and intentional in how you work with, enter, and address these problems.
Excellent point. Thank you so much, Dr. Agnes Thomas, for your wonderful briefing, description, analysis on foundations for community development practice. And we are going to integrate your contribution in our community development practice from Canadian and global perspective. And our learners, our students, our community members will have access to it. It's a free resource. And I really appreciate your contribution for our podcast as well as for our e-resource, OER, Open Educational Resource.
Thank you for having me. Such a great privilege. And one last word, be intentional and don't be afraid. As long as you're open and willing to listen, you have halfway into the community. And so be intentional in whatever you do and treat people with respect. I think you will be treated with respect.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Agnes Thomas.
So this is more of our staff journey. So we do invest quite a bit of, like as I mentioned, like we have such a diverse team. So we look at, this is also again deriving from a philosophy where if you're not well, you cannot take care of the others. So we do believe in a strong staff culture because we are serving the communities. And so what you are seeing here is a little bit of our work.
Thank you.
And how we work together.
Excellent.
And it is really engagement, collaboration, and many of the things that we hear and continues to talk and implement, because if I am happy and well, I am happy and well in how I share and serve.
Wonderful work.
So we have clients coming from all parts of the world, from all kind of situations, right? And so so you would see that on our walls and in places. So much histories and so many beautiful stories.
Excellent.